Every generation has a legend. Let's talk 20 years of the prequel trilogy.
How you get so big that you hold of this kind?
Hello and welcome in. Today I want to talk about the 20th anniversary of The Phantom Menace and what that means for the prequel trilogy as a whole. Phantom Menace has been a film that has been, can you say historically, if it's only 20 years? It has been, well, recently historically panned in a way that it does not deserve. Pretty much from the cultural memory that I have, and I don't want to not appreciate it for its 20th. I don't want to not take into the gravity of how amazing the 20th anniversary it is, but I also don't want to neglect the 14th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith and the 17th anniversary of Attack of the Clones that was just a couple of days ago. So I'm going to talk about The Phantom Menace, but I want to talk about my journey with the prequel trilogy as a whole, what the trilogy has meant to me as a Star Wars fan, and just kind of take a general couple of minutes here to appreciate this on this day. I was already a Star Wars fan when the prequel trilogy was coming out. I was not yet a Star Wars obsessive. That would actually not happen until Revenge of the Sith. I was definitely into it. I think the first Star Wars film I saw in theaters was the special edition of A New Hope, although I had seen all of the original trilogy before I had seen the re-releases in theaters. So I was already kind of used to the idea of Star Wars in theaters. This was happening at a point when I was very spoiled. So I was 7 when the original trilogy was getting re-released, and then just 2 years later the prequels were coming out. And so I never really had this sense of a gap. I never had this idea of a time without Star Wars. You know, I always had something new coming out as I was only a little kid during the quote-unquote dark times. I remember the lead up to The Phantom Menace. I've been seeing a lot of people talk about the sheer madness that was the advertising campaign for The Phantom Menace, and I remember it. Like, I remember the Taco Bell ads, and we had, in fact, I might still have. Do I still have? I had to locate it. I had this. This is the Anakin Pop Top. It was from the big Pepsi, KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, like, tri-corporation mega thing. I don't actually remember which location had Anakin, but, like, I had this little Anakin thing in my room forever. I always thought it actually looked kind of creepy. And so I certainly remember the ad campaign, but again, because of my age, I was 8 when Phantom came out. I was turning 9 later that year. I didn't realize that this wasn't normal. I didn't realize that it wasn't, I didn't realize it was unusual that movies wouldn't just be at Taco Bell or Pizza Hut. So I remember it, but I don't remember it as this blitzkrieg. It was this, oh yeah, this is what you do. A Star Wars movie comes out and you buy pop cans. I mean, it was everywhere and the ads were everywhere, but it was normal. Like, and it sounds so weird to say that because it wasn't normal, but like, I was just taking it in. Like, yeah, the sky is blue, sometimes it rains, and there's Star Wars on everything. And I saw the movie, and I did not see Phantom right when it came out. I don't think anybody really wanted to take an 8-year-old to, like, opening weekend. Like, my parents are Star Wars fans, but they are not freaks like I am about it. My parents are big movie fans, so they appreciated Star Wars from that sense. But they were not, we need to go out there opening weekend with an 8-year-old child level fans, you know? So I saw it, I don't know how much later, but later. Phantom gets a lot of grief for being a bad movie, right? If you've been anywhere on the internet in the last 20 years, you're aware of this. And I always like to joke with people, and I don't know if I've told this story on the channel before, I probably have, and I apologize if I'm doubling up. People like to talk about how Phantom Menace ruined their childhoods, or it was so bad, and like they like to be really dramatic about it. Well, when I was a kid, I used to get really bad motion sickness. I still get motion sickness, but I've mostly learned how to keep it under control. But when I was a kid, it was bad. Like, if you had me in a car for more than 20 minutes, you were taking a risk. And we went to the movies to see Phantom. We were in, like, the center prime movie theater seats, and the pod race, that's everyone's favorite, literally made me vomit. Like, I got car sick in the movie theater, not car sick, but motion sick in the theater because of the motion effects on the pod racers, and my poor mother spent, like, the next half hour in the movie theater bathroom with me as I'm just puking in the movie theater bathroom because I got so sick from the movie. So anytime someone's like, oh, that movie was so bad, I'm like, well, it literally made me vomit because it was good. I have a memory too of, like, I'll never forget seeing it for the first time, and it gets to the space battle, and my parents are so terrified I'm gonna puke again that, you know how movie theaters kind of have like that aisleway, you walk in and you walk around and there's the seats. My dad had me in that aisleway, and he was letting me watch the movie standing up in the hallway, which probably broke every fire code there was. And I could watch the Gungan Naboo battle, the land battle. I could watch the lightsaber fight, but I was not allowed to watch the space battle because they were afraid the space battle was also going to make me sick. So I have memories of standing there watching it, and as soon as it would get to space, my dad would yank on the back of my shirt and pull me back around the wall so I couldn't see the movie anymore. Like, I don't remember many times seeing a movie for the first time when I was only 8, but I will never forget seeing Phantom Menace for the first time, and I loved the movie anyway. And I always say that I didn't become a freak about Star Wars until Revenge of the Sith, but then I think back on how much I loved Star Wars as a kid, and maybe it was always there and I just didn't recognize it, I don't know. But like, I remember that summer, and for many summers after, I would be on our deck, and we had like stairs going off of our deck, and I'd get a sprinkler going, and the sprinkler would, like, you know, move across the yard, and I'd have one of those plastic like baseball bats that every kid had, and I would stand up on the deck and I'd be like, "Captain, take them to Camp 4. Roger, roger." And then I would like time it, and I would jump down like I was Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and like fight the sprinkler with my plastic bat, because I at the end of the day I always wanted to be a Jedi Knight. Like, before the prequel trilogy, I wanted to be Luke Skywalker, not because I gave a single amount of care about Luke Skywalker, because I don't think I did, but he had a lightsaber, and so I cared. And then when the prequel trilogy came out, I wanted to be Qui-Gon or Obi-Wan because they had lightsabers. That was the sole connection. That was the only thing that mattered. Whoever had a lightsaber, that's who I wanted to be. And then it was 3 long, grueling years until Attack of the Clones. And I loved that ad campaign. I don't know if you guys remember, but those had the like character-specific TV spots. Like, there was the Mace Windu one, and it was like this thing and this thing, and he had an Electrum lightsaber, and that was so cool, because like, who gives a crap about an Electrum lightsaber crystal? But it was in the TV spot, and like, the Yoda had one, and Anakin had one, and I loved those TV ads, and I'd watch them over and over again. And I went to see that movie in theaters, and I remember distinctly being told by people that Anakin and Padme were gonna fall in love, and I was like, no, they're not, because Padme's like 10 years older than Anakin, and that would be creepy. I was very adamant about it, because at the end of the day, 8-year-old me thought the Yoda puppet looked creepy, and that Padme must have been significantly older than Anakin. I don't think 8-year-old me ever bought Natalie Portman as like 14-year-old Padme Amidala, and so people were like, they're gonna get together, and I'm like, no, they're not, she's too old for him. And then I saw the movie poster, the famous one where it's like Anakin and Padme and like, Jedi shall not know love, and I was like, dang it, all those people were right, and I was really angry about it. I was really just so mad, not that I was wrong, but that the other people were right, dang it. Remember, I was 11 at this point, so cut me a little bit of slack. So then I saw Attack of the Clones, and totally on brand. The only memory I have of seeing it, I remember more of Phantom Menace, seeing Phantom Menace in the theaters. To go back to Phantom, the other thing I remember thinking is the part where Qui-Gon gets stabbed. I was like, I know how they did that. They put half of a lightsaber in front of Qui-Gon Jinn and a half of a lightsaber on the back, and they like glued it on him, and there's not one really going through him. I was really smart because I knew how movies work. But anyway, I have all these memories of seeing Phantom. My only memory of seeing Attack of the Clones in theaters was Yoda. I remember being in the theater like, Yoda's gonna fight in this one, because I had seen the TV spots. I'm so excited. There's that part on Geonosis where he's like hobbling out, and literally the movie theater just started cheering, Yoda, Yoda, Yoda. And then around the Attack of the Clones, when I started to get like super, super obsessed, and I had, oh, do I still have that book? Hold on. I still have it. Okay. I keep finding all of this stuff that I used to have. This is an old making of the Phantom Menace book. I guess it would be the equivalent to the ones that Phil Sostak makes. And I remember looking through this book, and somewhere along the line, this is when I learned about actors, and like actors played people. So I found who played Chancellor Palpatine. And then I had this other book, The Essential Guide to Characters. Like, this is old school first gen essential guides. For those of you who remember essential guides, they had Emperor Palpatine. And this book that I got in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith was the first time I learned that the Emperor had a last name, and it was Palpatine. But here's a guy who's Senator Palpatine, and then I did a little bit more research on the internet, and I found out the guy who played Emperor Palpatine was the same actor who played Senator Palpatine. And that's when I figured out that they were the same person. and that the Emperor was really the Chancellor, which didn't surprise me because he was super creepy in Attack of the Clones. Like, I remember watching Attack of the Clones and I'm like, man, that Chancellor, there's something up with him. I don't trust him. His eyes look a little funky. And I had this theory, and I told people my theory, and I was very smart and very intelligent because I figured this out all on my own. And then it would be a little ways later that I learned that literally everyone but me apparently knew this, and I didn't. So that was my journey with my first time speculating about Star Wars, was when I solved the mystery of who Darth Sidious was. So that's the qualifications I bring to this channel. And then I remember, like, waiting for Revenge of the Sith, and before Revenge of the Sith came out, seeing the Empire Dreams documentary was a big thing, and that's when I learned about Revenge of the Jedi. And Return of the Jedi was almost called Revenge of the Jedi. And it was a little ways after that the title for Episode 3 got announced. And I remember where I was. I was on vacation, of all places. I was out with my family, and there was this thing called a newspaper. If you guys are familiar with newspapers, I checked the newspaper, saw that the title was going to be Revenge of the Sith, and that is when something just clicked in my brain, like a switch went off. And that connection between, like, oh, it was almost Revenge of the Jedi, but now it's going to be Revenge of the Sith, and like that kind of is like poetry rhymes moment just exploded in my brain, and I am what you see of me today. Because of that moment and because of the lead up to Revenge of the Sith. That's when I started to learn that the expanded universe was a thing. I didn't read a lot of it before Revenge because I learned first that the expanded universe was a thing, and second that the expanded universe largely contradicted the prequels because a lot of Legends content got made during that Star Wars dark time before they knew what the prequel trilogy was going to be. So I said that I was going to start reading the books, but I was going to wait until I saw Revenge of the Sith so that I would know what was correct. So that when I would read the books, like, then I would know what contradicted it, as opposed to reading something to see the movie contradict it. Like, I wanted to have the movie be the first impression and the correct thing in my mind. And it got bad from there. Like, I watched it was sometime in the summer, so sometime in the summer until May, I watched at least a Star Wars film a day, and there were only 5. I had them on loop. I never fully wrote fan fiction, but I came up, like, with my own Star Wars character and, like, designed a story for her and how she'd fit into the movies, and I'd watch the movies to figure out where I would put her in the story, and it was fun. And that's just when everything exploded. And then I saw Revenge of the Sith, and then I started reading the Clone Wars novels. I played Knights of the Old Republic, and then I became a full-on Star Wars fanatic. But really the reason for this big, long, my journey through the prequel trilogy is to say how important this was, but I also want to kind of tie this into what we're about to go through with the Rise of Skywalker. So, when I saw Revenge of the Sith, my fandom was just blooming, but it was also just ending. Because at the time, we were getting, quote-unquote, the final chapter of the Skywalker saga. I remember seeing the last shot of Revenge of the Sith and seeing the binary sunset with Owen and Beru holding Luke, and I just knew intrinsically that was going to be the last shot of the film. And I was so sad because I was seeing the last shot of Star Wars, and I knew I was seeing the last shot of a Star Wars film that I would ever see in theaters again. But I was also so happy because it was the perfect last shot of Star Wars that I would ever see in theaters again. Part of why I became such a big fan of Star Wars The Clone Wars was because that was the Star Wars I was going to get. Like, I was wondering what was going to happen to Star Wars. Like, I just started to love this thing to see what was going to happen with it, and then just 3 years later we would start our journey with the Clone Wars. That was going to become Star Wars for me. It's different going into TROS, and I want to talk about this because I know a lot of people are worried in light of how things went with The Last Jedi, in light how other major franchises that are ending right now are going, and some people being excited and some people being disappointed, and the nervousness that people have. It's important to remember that this time, Star Wars isn't ending, right? So there was the big hype with Revenge of the Sith that this was, the prequel trilogy was going to be it. And that was part of people's frustration with it, maybe, if they were disappointed because this was it. But there was also kind of that excitement, but there was also that sadness. But now, with TROS, we have more movies coming. And maybe you're in the camp that is not excited about the people making it as we go forward. And maybe you're in the camp of people who can't wait for the filmmakers that we're going to get. Maybe, you know, you're just excited for Disney Plus. Maybe, who knows where you're falling right now. But it's so different. Because when Revenge of the Sith was ending, there was a chance Star Wars was ending. And little did we know how wrong we were. But now with Tross, the Skywalker saga might be ending. Of course, it's already ended once, so I'll believe it when I never see it again, I suppose. But the Skywalker saga might be ending. But Star Wars is going to keep going. And it's going to keep going just as strong as it ever had. I mean, the very fact that, you know, we took a year off from Celebration last year, and now we already know that we have Anaheim next year without a movie to promote. I mean, they're going to keep this going, and I think that's only a good thing. We shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't be afraid of if we're going to like Tross or not. There's a chance we won't. I'm fully aware that there's a chance I won't like The Rise of Skywalker, and I don't say that to be negative, and I don't say that to bring down expectations. But there's a chance that Rise of Skywalker is going to be my favorite Star Wars film of all time. The important thing to remember as we go into this movie and we're worried about, will the characters go the way we want them to? Will Palpatine coming back be reasonable or not? It's going to be okay, because it's not going to end. And I know it not ending scares people, because they're like, well, what terrible, horrible things are going to happen? But it shouldn't scare you. It should free you. Because if there's always going to be more Star Wars, there's always going to be a chance that you're going to like something. There's always going to be that one more chance that the thing that's made specifically for you is going to come on the screen. And I guess that's kind of, in my look back on the prequel trilogy now, and what the prequel trilogy meant, and how I grew as a Star Wars fan, became a Star Wars fan because of the prequel trilogy, and so many of my experiences are that way. So many of my experiences with the sequel trilogy are completely different. And that's because we're not coming up on an ending, we're coming up on a new chapter. That's my look back at the beginning, that's actually the middle, as we move forward towards whatever an end will be, way, way down in the future. Please, if you're still watching after that kind of long ramble, consider following us on the various socials. Come chat with us. I would love to hear about what your prequel trilogy experience is. Please leave it in the comments or find us on a different platform. And until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.